Queens, New York. A blur of bright silk robes, ancient melodies spilling from storefront speakers, the scent of saffron and slow-cooked plov drifting down 108th Street. This is Little Bokhara. Here, in the heart of modern America, an ancient community thrives. The Bukharan Jews. They dance at weddings, under embroidered canopies their ancestors once carried through the bazaars of Samarkand. They pray in synagogues echoing chants from a world long vanished. And they tell their children, "We come from the Silk Road, but we are Jews of Israel." A beautiful story, yet a paradox. For over 2,500 years, their families lived in Central Asia. Through Persian empires, Turkic Khanates, Mongol storms, and the cold grip of the Soviet machine. Centuries surrounded by Muslim neighbors, Uzbeks, Tajiks, speaking their languages, walking their markets. And yet, when modern scientists peered into their DNA, the results stunned even the experts. Genetic markers from ancient Israel, deep clustering with Iraqi, Iranian, Kurdish Jews, not the Central Asians they lived among. And even more shocking, almost no genetic blending with those neighbors. How did a small people, scattered along the Silk Road, hold onto an identity encoded in blood, through centuries of exile, isolation, and relentless pressure to disappear? The more researchers looked, the deeper the mystery grew. Certain maternal lineages traced back to just a handful of women, their mitochondrial signature unchanged for 1,000 years. Male lines carrying priestly markers, direct echoes of the ancient temple in Jerusalem. Yet their customs shimmer with Persian grace, their music hums with Turkic rhythms, their food, their dress, their language, shaped by 1,000 cultural tides. And still, beneath it all, the DNA whispers, "You are not of this land." What invisible walls shielded them? What ancient vows bound them, when so many other diasporas dissolved into history? To answer that, we must go back to where this journey began, to Babylon. Babylon, a name that still echoes with exile loss and the first great fracture of a people. In 597 BCE, the armies came, iron fire chains. The temple in Jerusalem was stripped bare. Its guardians, its priests, its scholars, marched east across the deserts into the heart of an empire. But they kept moving, beyond Babylon's towers, beyond the Fertile Crescent, farther east, along the winding arteries of the ancient world. Caravans heavy with silks, spices, and memories. Jewish merchants, exiles, families, carrying sacred scrolls beside trade goods, carrying a name, Bni Israel, in tongues now lost. Through Persia, through Sogdiana, Bactria, to the crossroads we now call the Silk Road. And there, beneath snow-capped mountains and endless steppes, they stayed, for millennia. And here is the contradiction. They lived among Persians, Uzbeks, Tajiks, 1,000 years in lands where cultures blend like rivers. Yet when modern science mapped their genomes, the results defied history's logic. Bukharan Jews shared deep genetic ties with their ancient kin, Iraqi Jews, Iranian Jews, Kurdish Jews, a clear, Levantine thread, shining across time, and almost no genetic imprint from the Central Asian peoples they lived among. How did the blood of Jerusalem's exiles remain so pure, so untouched, after 25 centuries in foreign lands? The Silk Road was no fortress. It was a living artery, where merchants and cultures mingled. So why not here? Why did this community, one of the oldest of the Jewish diaspora, remain a genetic island in a sea of change? To uncover that secret, we must step into the shadows of history and face the walls, both seen and unseen, that rose around them. Not all walls are built of stone. Some are stitched into garments, etched into law, burned into memory. For centuries, the Jews of Central Asia lived beneath the gaze of empire after empire, and under Islamic rule, a new set of walls began to rise. They were called dhimmi, protected by law. But protection came at a cost. Each year, a ritual humiliation. The jizya tax, collected by force. Men forced to kneel struck across the face, as payment for the right to exist. Their homes, ordered built lower than Muslim neighbors. Their clothes, marked, a patch of yellow cloth, sewn to the shoulder, branding them, a twisted badge of shame. Their belts, Rope, never leather. Their horses? Forbidden. They walked. Always. 1,000 small rules designed to separate. To remind. You are other. You are lesser. But beneath this crushing weight, something else began to take shape. An identity, hardened like tempered steel. Endogamy, the quiet defiance. Marry only among our own. Keep the bloodline pure, even when the world seeks to erase it. And modern science would later find the echo of this vow written in the genes. No blending with the dominant peoples around them. A genetic fingerprint sealed across centuries. Even their garments spoke this truth. The Bukharan skullcap, a signal of survival. The silk-threaded robes, worn in secret, then in pride. Through forced quarters, through whispered prayers, through the darkest nights of persecution, this community did not vanish. It became unbreakable. But what science would soon uncover, hidden deep in their DNA, was not just a story of walls. No, there were deeper twists to come. Clues that would challenge even their own understanding of who they truly were. Blood remembers, even when stories fade. For the Bukharan Jews, modern science uncovered a secret, not in ancient scrolls or stone carvings, but in the quiet code of life itself. The mitochondria, tiny powerhouses in every cell, passed only from mother to child. A genetic whisper that traces the unbroken line of mothers across time. When researchers mapped the mitochondrial DNA of this community, what they found was astonishing. Almost all modern Bukharan Jews descend from just a handful of women. A founder effect, they call it. A bottleneck so sharp, so narrow, that it froze a sliver of the past into the present. Visualize it. 1,000 years ago, perhaps more, amid the turmoil of conquest, exile, plague, a few women survived. Their daughters and their daughters' daughters carried the flame forward. Through the dark centuries of oppression, when whole families vanished, it was these hidden matriarchs who unknowingly shaped the genetic future of their people. While the outside world changed, rulers fell, borders shifted, their line endured. Today, the maternal signatures in Bukharan DNA read like a ghost script, an unbroken thread of identity, carried in silence from mother to child beneath veils, beneath forced quarters, beneath centuries of fear. And while the maternal line narrowed, the paternal story tells its own tale. The Y chromosomes still echo the priestly lines of ancient Israel. The Cohen modal haplotype, markers of the temple priests, runs through the veins of Bukharan Jewish men even now. 2 lines, 2 legacies. One fragile, shaped by survival. The other enduring, bound by tradition. But here's where the mystery deepens. For even as these patterns of isolation emerge, another signal flickers within the data. A faint pulse from beyond. One that suggests the story is more complex than anyone imagined. Was this community truly sealed off for all those centuries? The next genetic reveal will tell a different story. For a people so long isolated, the Bukharan Jewish genome seemed sealed impenetrable, until a faint ripple appeared. Subtle, almost ghost-like. Hidden within the maternal DNA, scientists detected haplogroups, not from the Levant, not from Persia, but from the very heart of Central Asia. A contradiction. If the walls had held so firm, if the community had remained so untouched, then how did these ancient local signatures slip through? The answer, perhaps, lies not in conquest, but in something quieter. Human connection. Along the Silk Road, where goods moved, so too did people. And in rare moments, under unknown circumstances, local women joined the Jewish fold. Who were they? A trader's daughter, perhaps, whose family perished in war. A convert drawn to the scrolls and the songs. A bride, chosen not by blood, but by bond. Their names are lost, but their imprint lingers in every cell of their descendants. And the culture remembers, too. Listen closely. In Bukharan synagogues, the melodies are not just Sephardic, they shimmer with the modes of Central Asia. In weddings, the ancient Mavriji dance, steps echoing Turkic and Persian traditions, fills the night. Even the Torah scrolls tell this layered story. Wrapped in embroidered Sazani textiles, vibrant with symbols from distant looms. Genetic walls may have held strong, but cultural bridges wove their way in. A fusion delicate, resilient, uniquely Bukharan. Yet even as scientists traced these local echoes, another signal began to stir. Far older, far stranger, an unexpected thread, reaching beyond the mountains, beyond Central Asia itself, into a past no one had anticipated. And what it reveals will reshape the very map of Bukharan ancestry. Just when the story of Bukharan DNA seemed written, the next reveal shattered all assumptions. In the genetic data, a signal, unexpected, impossible to ignore. Sub-Saharan African ancestry, not a trace, not a fluke. 3 to 5% consistent, undeniable. In a people whose ancestors had lived for millennia along the Silk Road, in the shadow of Persian and Central Asian empires. A contradiction. How could these genes, from so distant a land, find their way into the heart of this ancient Jewish enclave? Scientists looked deeper, and the pattern emerged not unique to Bukharan Jews alone, but shared with Jewish communities scattered across continents. Iraqi Jews, Iranian Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, even Sephardic Jews of Spain and North Africa. A common thread. But where did it begin? One possibility, the ancient Mediterranean trade routes. Another, deeper still, the Babylonian exile itself. For even in Babylon, the Jewish world was not closed. Merchants from Africa plied the same rivers. Soldiers, servants, scholars. Human lives crisscrossed empires long before our modern maps existed. And somewhere in that swirling current of history, a union occurred. A lineage was born. A thread of African ancestry, woven into the fabric of Jewish identity, carried eastward through Persia, along the Silk Road, into Bukhara itself, and there preserved, locked within the tight bonds of an isolated community, unseen until now. A silent testament that even in exile, no people is truly alone. A diaspora is not a wall, it is a river, carrying fragments of many worlds into one. And for the Bukharan Jews, it means their story was always bigger than exile alone. It was shaped by unseen hands across continents, across centuries. But in that tapestry of migrations, another puzzle remains. Today, the Bukharan Jews pray in Sephardic melodies, under Sephardic rites. Yet their roots lie in ancient Persia. So how did they come to be called Sephardic at all? The next chapter holds the answer. Bukhara, a city of ancient walls and winding streets, the crossroads of empire, and in the 18th century, a Jewish community long forgotten by the outside world. For centuries, they had followed their own path. A Persian Jewish rite, shaped by exile, shaped by survival. Their prayers tinged with the cadence of ancient Persia. Their Torah scrolls wrapped in local silks. Their Hebrew spoken in the accents of distant Babylon. And then, in 1793, he arrived, Rabbi Yosef Maimon, a Sephardic scholar born in Morocco, a man of the wider Jewish world, a world this community had not seen in generations. To him, the Bukharan way seemed strange, incomplete, the rituals unfamiliar, the laws in need of repair. He brought with him the Sephardic sitter, the rulings of the Shulchan Aruch, the melodies of Spain, carried across continents. And suddenly, the old ways stood face to face with the new. Within the Mahalas, whispered debates. Are we Persian Jews? Or now, Sephardic? Or something else entirely? Some embraced the change, a chance to reconnect with the greater Jewish world. Others resisted, clinging to the fragile traditions of their ancestors. But slowly, the tide turned. Sephardic rites took root. New melodies echoed through the synagogues. Books arrived from Istanbul, from Jerusalem. Yet beneath this transformation, something deeper remained unchanged. The DNA told a quieter story. Through all the shifts of prayer and practice, the genetic threads of Persian and Babylonian ancestry held firm. Rituals could evolve. Books could change. But blood remembers. And now, in the hands of modern scientists, that blood would reveal even more. A new discovery was about to surface, one that could finally pinpoint when this community truly crystallized into the people we know today. And it begins with a single mutation. Sometimes, history leaves no written record, no scrolls, no songs, no stone, but it leaves something deeper, etched in the code of life itself. A mutation. In the DNA of Bukharan Jews today, scientists found one, a rare variant, linked to a form of muscular dystrophy. But this wasn't random. It carried a signature, a timestamp. Using molecular clock techniques, they traced it, back through generations, back through centuries of exile, until it stopped, around the 13th century. A moment frozen in time. But what happened then? History holds the answer. The Mongol invasions. Genghis Khan's armies swept through Transoxiana, the heartland of the Silk Road. Samarkand, Bukhara, Khwarezm cities burned to ash. Libraries, homes, entire communities vanished overnight. And among the fleeing, the Jews of Central Asia. Families torn apart. Lines of descent shattered. Those who survived few. Those who stayed, even fewer. And in this crucible of destruction, the mutation spread. A genetic scar, marking the bottleneck. The point when the community's numbers collapsed, and its future narrowed. But they endured. Through smoke, through silence, through unimaginable loss, they rebuilt. In the shadow of that devastation, the identity of Bukharan Jews was reforged. Tighter, more isolated, bound by memory and blood. And today, nearly 8 centuries later, their DNA still bears the echo of that trauma, a living testament to survival. But even as they rose from the ashes of the Mongol storm, a new force would soon descend upon them. Far colder, far more insidious. A machine that would seek to erase identity itself. What happens when a 2,000-year-old diaspora faces the full power of the Soviet juggernaut? The next chapter begins. It wasn't fire this time. Not swords, not siege engines. It was something colder, quieter. An ideology, relentless as ice. The Soviet machine. In the early 20th century, a new war began, not against bodies, but against memory. Synagogues shuttered. Torah scrolls, hidden in cellars, or burned. Rabbis vanished in the night. The Bukhari language, banned from schools. Songs once sung at weddings, now whispered behind closed doors. For a community that had survived Mongols and Khans, this was a different kind of exile. A war of the soul. And then came 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed. Borders opened. But what freedom revealed was a terrible truth. The heartland of Bukharan Jews, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, stood almost empty. The exodus began. Families poured out, to Israel, to New York, to Vienna, and Toronto. DNA studies would later confirm it, a final rupture. A diaspora, scattered across the globe. And in the ancient cities of Bukhara and Samarkand, only ghosts remained. A few elders, too frail to leave. Crumbling synagogues, their floors swept by hands that remember. Gravestones, withered by time, but fiercely tended by those who return, year after year, from half a world away. How does a people survive when their land no longer holds them? When the streets that once rang with their footsteps fall silent? When the songs of mothers and grandmothers fade beneath the roar of new languages, new worlds? And yet, in the blood, in the cells, something persists. A genetic story, still evolving. Across oceans, across continents. And what the latest studies reveal is a new chapter unfolding. One no one predicted. The diaspora is not the end. It is the next beginning. Across oceans, across centuries they came. And today in Queens, New York, the echoes of the Silk Road hum once more. On 108th Street, they call it Little Bukhara. Here, beneath the towering skyline of modern America, an ancient world breathes. Men in embroidered skullcaps, buying saffron and pomegranates from open markets. Women preparing ashplav, the same dish their ancestors carried through desert caravans. In synagogues, the prayers rise, Sephardic in sound, yet laced with melodies older than memory. A language, Bukhari, still spoken between elders and grandchildren. A thread of survival, pulled tight through time. But in this new world, another tension simmers. Assimilation or preservation. DNA studies reveal it. The genetic distinctiveness of Bukharan Jews remains sharp. Even here, in the American melting pot. Paternal lineages unchanged. Maternal threads still traceable to the ancient mothers of Central Asia. But for how long? In homes where English now dominates, where Russian or Hebrew mingle with fading Bukhari, the old identity stands at a crossroads. And yet, beneath the surface, resilience runs deep. Youth programs teach forgotten songs. festivals revive lost dances. And in family kitchens, ancient recipes pass, one generation to the next. A living bridge from the Silk Road to Queens. But even as this story continues to unfold, science whispers of something larger, of mysteries still locked in our blood. How many ancient migrations remain hidden in our DNA? What other forgotten diasporas wait to be uncovered? The search is far from over. The journey of a people scattered across continents, shaped by exile, by survival, by memory. But in the end, what defines us? Is it the cities we build, the languages we speak, the flags we stand beneath, or something older, deeper, written beneath the skin? In strands of DNA, carried from mother to child, from father to son, across 1,000 years. In stories etched in blood. Bukharan Jews today live in Queens, in Tel Aviv, in Vienna, far from the ancient caravan routes of Samarkand. But their genes still whisper of Babylon, of Jerusalem, of the Silk Road. So we ask, are we more defined by where we live, or by the stories in our genes? The answers are only beginning to unfold. If you're fascinated by lost histories, and the secrets our DNA still holds, subscribe for more untold stories. Because next we follow the trail of another Jewish diaspora, one whose DNA has just rewritten their entire history. And what we'll uncover may change everything we thought we knew.